Welcome to the Boxing Gossip channel. Many thanks for tuning in. Please do hit subscribe if you have not yet done so. I'm referring to an article recently covered on Boxing Scene. The headline of the article is Tyson Fury. After that win, Saunders is in top 10 pound for pound. The article on Boxing Scene refers to an interview Tyson Fury did when he was speaking to Boxcaster after Saunders' unanimous decision win against David Lemieux. Fury commented, "He showed his level. He showed why he's a world champion. There was 12 rounds of precise boxing, counter-punching. With big punches, they carry their power right through to the 12th round. So you've got to be careful and keep your wits about you." Tyson Fury was then later asked whether Saunders should be considered in the top 10 pound for pound. Fury replied, "Most definitely. He's undefeated. 26-0. Middleweight champion of the world. Everyone he's boxed, he's dealt with quite comfortably. On that performance, I definitely put him in the top 10 pound for pound in the world. He's a very awkward boxer. Anyone with slow feet and fast hands will struggle against him." So, Tyson Fury's come out with these comments. Now, interestingly, on the video that I did the other day, which is up on the channel if anyone wants to check it out, that video was a quite extended post-fight review of the Billy Joe Saunders David Lemieux fight from the other day. And on that video, or off the back of that video, I received multiple people asking me where Billy Joe Saunders was on the pound for pound list. It wasn't just one or two. There were multiple comments either on the video or that I got through Facebook or whatever, asking me for my thoughts on that. So I thought potentially an interesting topic to do a little video on, especially given Tyson Fury's recent comments. Now, long-time viewers will know that for me, pound for pound is all about resume. For me, I can't look at a fighter and base purely on eye test where I rate them on pound for pound. Resume has got to be the predominant factor. I've always suggested that if we do a pound for pound on eye test, you're eventually going to have a lean to power punches. Look at a guy like Deontay Wilder. He's had some difficult moments in his career, but the majority of fights he's won easily, and he's won by devastating knockout. I think he's got 39 wins at this stage, with 38 coming by way of knockout. Look at prospects. Look at a guy like Daniel Dubois. How do you quantify somebody's performance based on eye test when they're fighting that level of opposition? You know, I've always had the perspective that, you know, let's say Deontay Wilder has appeared to be an excellent fighter in eye test based on the opposition he's been in with. Now, someone like Joseph Parker has, for me, been a bit tougher matched than Deontay Wilder. Let's at least consider the possibility that Joseph Parker could have been every bit as devastating if he had faced the likes of Gerald Washington, or if he had faced the likes of Eric Molina instead of the likes of Hughie Fury and Andy Ruiz. So for me, the best way of getting accuracy on a pound for pound list is for looking at resume. You know, so often fighters look like the real deal until they step up to that elite class, and so often they're found wanting when it gets to that elite class. So let's dissect Tyson Fury's comments and let's give my take on it. When asked if Billy Joe should be considered top 10 pound for pound, Fury replied, "Most definitely. He's undefeated, 26-0, middleweight champion of the world." So I want to start by dissecting that part of the statement. He's undefeated, 26-0, middleweight champion of the world. Now, for me, that does not a pound for pound fighter make. And long-time viewers will know that I'm one of the biggest Billy Joe Saunders fans out there. I've been following him from day dot. I've picked him in every single one of his fights. I'm a huge fan of his. But boxing is a strange sport these days. A fighter getting to 26 fights without loss is not uncommon. A fighter holding a version of the world title without beating a dominant champion is not uncommon. And I think we've got to be consistent. You know, the same way that I wasn't classing Golovkin as a top pound for pound fighter when he was an undefeated fighter who initially was taking out the likes of Matthew Macklin and Martin Murray. You know, I've got to remain consistent. And just because I'm a huge fan of Billy Joe doesn't mean by that reckoning that I now have him in the pound for pound list, because we could pick any number of undefeated world champions who haven't really got form that amounts to too much. So where I look at Billy Joe's resume, he's actually got a very good resume, but he's got a good resume at a certain level. A guy like Andy Lee, world level fighter, higher top 10, lower top 5, that sort of bracket. Guy like David Lemieux, again, world level fighter, higher top 10, lower top 5, there or thereabouts. Guy like Chris Eubank Jr., same, you know. He'd beaten a lot of names in that category. Eubank, Lemieux, Lee. For me, these are world level fighters. They're kind of there or thereabouts, top 5 in their divisions. But they're no higher than top 5. There's none of those guys you could confidently say is a top 3 fighter. There's none of those guys that you could confidently say is elite. If you look at those guys' best wins, I'm unsure if Lee, if Eubank, if Lee hasn't got an elite win, I don't believe. Eubank doesn't have an elite win, I don't believe. Lemieux doesn't have an elite win, I don't believe. So for me, Billy Joe Saunders has a very good resume, and he's actually in a good position to get on the pound for pound list. But at this point, it's lacking that elite standard name. I mean, even if we look at fighters in Britain, Frampton has a more elite name. Joshua has a more elite name. Fury has a more elite name. You know, I'd say Saunders' resume is kind of more like a Kell Brook without the losses. Maybe like a Lee Selby. Maybe like a Jamie McDonnell. He's in that kind of bracket, but he lacks the elite name. Now, the next part of Tyson Furys' statement I agree with. Everyone he's boxed, he's dealt with quite comfortably. And he said he's a very awkward boxer. Anyone with slow feet and fast hands will struggle against him. And look, there's certainly a style that Billy Joe makes easy work of, you know. You look at some of Billy Joe's best work, it's going to be against fighters like David Lemieux. It's going to be against fighters who look plodding, ponderous, green, amateurish, slow. Billy Joe's got a huge amount of advantages. But then again, there's also fighters you could pick who stylistically could cause Billy Joe Saunders nightmares. I watched Ultratech Sports video the other day, which I always recommend, about Golovkin's style to beat Billy Joe Saunders. And look, regardless of what your take on that fight is, let's agree that Gennady Golovkin is going to cause stylistic problems tenfold what David Lemieux did from a styles makes fights perspective. So I guess my take is, where does Billy Joe Saunders sit? For me, from a resume perspective, he's either 3rd or 4th at middleweight. I don't believe his resume is as strong as Canelo's. I don't believe his resume is as strong as Golovkin's. The Daniel Jacobs Billy Joe Saunders resume competition is a debate. Jacobs has a loss on his record. Jacobs has fought some lower level competition. But at the same time, Jacobs has a big win over Peter Quinlan. And one could argue that from a single piece of form perspective, that is greater than anything Billy Joe Saunders has achieved. Saunders has a good win over Eubank. Eubank may go on to be a dominant world champion. If he does, that win will look great in hindsight. But it's kind of hard to tell at this stage. So I have Saunders either 3rd or 4th in his respective division. And I have his best win at the time of the fight probably being David Lemieux. And if we've named the top 4 at middleweight, you'd probably throw Charlo into the mix, and then you'd probably be talking Lemieux. So you're saying his best win in the division is probably number 6, give or take. So for me, the fact he's someone I'm a huge fan of, the fact he's a champion, the fact he's an undefeated middleweight boxer does not contribute to him being in the pound for pound top 10, to answer the question directly. And with some of the fighters we have, some of the resumes we have, some of the competition we have, it's kind of hard to include Billy Joe Saunders in that conversation. For me, potentially top 25, but lower end. And the key to improving that will be to take a big win against someone in the top 10, in the top 3 or 4 at middleweight. You know, a win over Jacobs, a win over Canelo, a win over Golovkin, we can revisit the conversation. Golovkin, Canelo, these are both guys I have in the top 10. A win over them, a win over someone already in the pound for pound top 10, would certainly be the strongest way to solidify your claim. But for me, in the interest of remaining consistent, I will disagree with Tyson Fury, my favourite fighter. And I will disagree with him regarding his commentary on Billy Joe Saunders, who is probably my second favourite fighter. And suggest that right now, still a little bit of work to do. Final comment will be, he is in a very, very good position to propel himself to that status. He's 28, he's coming into his peak, he's coming into his prime, and the fights are there. You know, Canelo, Golovkin, looks like those guys are going to rematch. Billy Joe Saunders has put himself in that conversation with the performance against David Lemieux, and a win over one of those guys could propel him not only to the pound for pound top 10, but potentially to the pound for pound top 5. Let me know your thoughts on this debate. Do you disagree with me? Do you have Saunders higher, or do you think my logic is sound? Let me know your thoughts. Many thanks for tuning in. If you've appreciated the content, please hit the thumbs up button. Please do subscribe, and as always, appreciate the support, guys.